welcome to the show. I think I have everybody online right now. Well, welcome. Oh, wait, my fire is gone. Oh,
don't look at the man behind the curtain.
I can't show the secrets behind the mat. Oh, there we go. There we go.
That's good.
You can see my corporate overlords are good. All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another edition of Fireside Chat, Tech Fireside Chats. I got my coffee mug with my good guys here. Oh, that looks interesting. How thinky can we live in those stores. We might as well say thank you. And I got some great guests today, and a new co-host, which is going to be awesome. We got Sunny Soy from I believe TriNet, right? I see the logo. You got set up a little bit so we can see the.
Yeah.
There we go.
Rep it.
So yes, TriNet. I used to have TriNet when I was at Brightbox, a New York VC-backed technology company, and I loved it because fantastic. I'm not. Actually, it's one of the best HR platforms out there. I can say that I had really good insurance. Love the benefits, and I always got paid on time. So very, very happy to try that.
Glad to hear that.
All the things you want, yeah.
I think getting paid in time is always the number one thing that most employees are worried about.
Pretty important.
And now a frequent guest and one of the best attorneys I know in actually anywhere, Dr. Law. Welcome back. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I thought everybody was supposed to have a cup of coffee. Do you have a? I'd give you my extra cup of Starbucks here, but there's
a glass of water, and that's about it.
I got a hot tea.
Okay, here we go. Cheers. Thanks for coming. Okay, welcome. I'm getting better at this. This is episode 4, and for anybody still watching, we live in the post-COVID world. It's the world is going. At least America is going to hell in a. Can I say those things? Yeah, it's on YouTube and ViewStub, so I guess I can say that. There's a lot of things happening thanks to COVID. And it's changing technology, and employee law. And I got some experts. And Joey, you come from one of the best-known, what can I say, HR, resource partners.
Recruiting and staffing. Yeah, talent acquisition.
And you guys specialize in high-level CTO, CMOs, very, very high-level technology positions, right? I'm already speaking.
Absolutely.
How about I stopped talking? You can tell I've already had enough coffee today. And I let each one of you, we do the round robin. Joey, why don't you start? Tell me about Blue Wave and tell me about what you do.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Joey Brodsky. I'm the manager of biz dev over at Blue Wave. We're a local to Orlando boutique staffing and talent acquisition agency. We primarily focus on helping high growth startups and technology firms scale their teams in really rapid pace. That's with all those really cool technology executives, marketing executives, sales executives, and then actually building out those teams underneath those people. It's cool. We take a very community-focused approach. We love seeing the growth actually right here in Orlando, and it's booming right now. It's exciting to be a part of it. So thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got Sunny. Why don't you help me as co-host? Jump in, ask some questions.
You got it, Joel. So why don't we start with how about we let John introduce himself a bit for a minute? John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I think Joel's thought process is people have heard from me enough, but I'm John Laster. I work with a lot of tech and gaming companies. I worked in the video game industry for almost 10 years. A lot of experience when it comes to indie devs, a lot of experience when it comes to helping companies sort out, complicated contracts and legal issues. I kind of work a lot of times as kind of like a general counsel out of house for a lot of smaller companies that don't have one guy on their team who kind of handles that role.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, and so I'll get back to you, Joel, but why don't we still stay with John for a bit? So
I'm gonna let you be co-host because let's switch roles here. How about you be more of the host and I'll be a guest today? How's that sound?
That works for me.
That cool job offer from being on the show, which I thought was great. So nobody really knows this. It just became a thing. So I've jumped on in a CRO role for CodeFirm, one of the sponsors of the show. And let's not forget our other sponsor, ViewStub.com. John, you know these guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely know them. Started doing some work with them as of about a week ago.
And the growth is just amazing. Amazing. If you haven't seen these guys, make sure you go to ViewStub.com. Probably one of the fastest growing technology companies in the country when it comes to events, meeting planners, and conventions. I mean, this is just a way for anybody to make money with streaming. So if you're stuck at home, like most of us are, or you should be, you're following the law, make sure to check out.
I gotta talk to these guys. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, what I like about John is I get a lot of complaints from clients. I have to pay my attorney so much money for X, Y, and Z. But John, why don't you give us a little story about how you made a client money, if you can, as much as possible without, breaching too much confidentiality.
Yeah, I've always been jealous a little bit of accountants because a lot of times they get to kind of have a very easy sales pitch, in my opinion. It's like, you owe 10 grand in taxes. Just give me $2,000 and I'll make that bill go down to like 5. So at the end of the day, you're coming out ahead no matter what. A lot of times in the legal industry, it's very much a risk management situation. Like, how much appetite do you really have for risk? And I mean, peace of mind is undervalued more times than it probably should be.
For sure.
And just recently, within the past year, I've had a nice positive situation in that regard where a client came to me with one of those agreements that honestly looks kind of boilerplate. You don't really think too much about signing it. I just went through it real quick and I'm like, this one provision in here just needs to be switched to mutual. Don't think it cost him very much. It was maybe like 15 minutes of my time. It ended up netting him well over $5,000 just off that, 15-minute interaction. So it's always nice when you have a positive story like that, because they don't come around as often as you'd like to think sometimes on the legal end. It's nice to actually have a client come back and be like, oh my God, look how good this actually helped me. A lot of times you're just kind of hoping to avoid a bad outcome. You're not always hoping to get a good outcome like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we'll come back to you, John, on a couple of things, but Joel, the new panel guy, switching roles here. There was some news about CodeFirm recently in the Orlando Business Journal. Why don't you share us what that's about and what you're seeing from clients regarding that technology?
Yeah, so CodeFirm.com is, I like to say that the founders have a really great interview in the Business Journal, and I'd like to say there's a secret sauce. I can't talk about the clients too much, but they've done a lot of big projects from machine learning, computer vision, drones, autonomous driving. I mean, they've done it all, right? Apps, a lot of very cool stuff. And I can't legally talk about it. So there's not much I can say about our clients' products. Let's just say that they're represented by some very interesting corporate giants in our field, right? And then, of course, there's the video game stuff that people do know about in VR and AR. We have talked about this openly, like Brand XR and some of the other companies like 302, some of our partners. But I can't talk about the theme parks or the aviation or the other high-level contracts. But very cool stuff. That's all I can say. So what is public is Vision, the temperature and security. I don't want to say that it's a disease checking because it's not sold as a disease checking. It's more of a security issue with temperature checking. But just leave it at that, right? So yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And Joey, we all know you, working with growing national technology companies. We're all a bit curious, what concerns are you seeing from the clients that you work with as, it's coming towards more COVID concerns or people returning back to work? What kind of stuff are you seeing from your clients?
Yeah, the toughest thing is I think it's really an overall theme of like organizational structure and a just fundamental flip in the candidate attraction and candidate hiring market right now. We went very dramatically from what we used to call a candidates market, where demand for high quality talent, technical talent, et cetera, generally like always outweighed the supply for it. And now it's the other way around. And people are learning how to like adapt to that with recruiting strategies, learning how to adapt to that just emotionally as candidates looking for jobs. It's obviously much tougher. We're seeing that reflected in like the normal things like unemployment rates and et cetera, job postings online that we're seeing. But weighs on like internal employees. It weighs on organizational structure and like the growth plans of a lot of companies that were in their high growth mode is kind of the where we sit. And people are finding different ways to navigate it. And other than that, of course, there's things like trying to onboard people remote for the companies that are still growing, like trying to hire people and get them set up without ever actually looking them in the eyes or like meeting them face to face. You know, it's interesting, and people are really leaning on technology, I think, more than ever.
So does that really change the interview process then? Just the whole, going through whether it might be Zoom or other technologies such as that to have those face-to-face meetings?
Absolutely. It's a lot of video, a lot of creative solutions. We're doing one-way video interviews. We're doing voice calls. We're doing phone calls, Zooms, etc. Everything you can think of. I think soon enough we'll be getting people in virtual reality chat rooms together or something. But what it's really done is like change the entire concept and value of like a recruitment agency, and it even changes like the way that an internal team like recruits for their own company. Where it used to be like we really need to like source really good candidates and like find the people there and like have high caliber talent attraction solutions, where like now you don't really have to have as higher caliber of talent solutions or have great landing pages or great career development value adds. Like there's a lot of candidates and a big source pool to get from. Now it's more about like being efficient and effective and narrowing that down, identifying those niche traits and like really laying into a lot of the soft interpersonal and like communication skills that like are going to make someone successful. So just because there's a lot more candidates out there right now, it almost makes it a tougher job to identify the people that are actually going to impact your organization, and people are kind of figuring that out.
Got it. Yeah, and John, we know you work with a lot of clients that have been funded or are trying to get funded. How has COVID really kind of thrown a wrench in that process, or anything popped up from a legal perspective on your side?
Honestly, that's a super interesting question, but I don't really know if there's a concrete answer to it. And I kind of hate being that attorney that says it depends, but in this situation, it really does depend on how prepared founders were for this kind of situation, and to kind of have all their ducks in a row, all their compliance stuff ready for when they have to have it checked for due diligence, whether or not they have digital presences out there. Like if you're completely reliant on VCs finding you, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than if you've already been aware of how you need to be positioning yourself to attract that kind of conversation, using platforms like LinkedIn to your advantage, using whatever other means there are. If you're desperate for, in-person referrals, that's pretty much dried up, and I mean, even in Orlando to begin with, that's probably not the best way to rely on things. It's not really a well-known secret in any means, that we're not exactly the biggest VC area in the country. Like, let's be real, the majority of that is Silicon Valley or New York or Boston. That's where people are going to assume that you need to be, and it's not that there's other stuff that isn't available, but, you just definitely have to think about it. So, I mean, I have some guys in California that are killing it because honestly, they're saying it's easier to get on the books with some of these people right now because they've got nothing else to do. Like they're all just on Zoom calls anyway. It's not like they can go on vacation right now. It's not like they can go, whatever else. So if you're figuring out how to reach the right people, and you have a product that can get their attention with that quick elevator pitch, getting those meetings hasn't been too difficult for the people I'm working with.
Yeah, and we're hearing the same thing. It's really easier to get the right decision maker on a call relative than it was prior to COVID, just because they are more available. So I guess this question is more for all three of you. I mean, so we're touching a lot about, COVID concerns post-COVID and what's going on, what we're seeing from clients. What have you seen from clients that are more successful right now with dealing with COVID? What have they been doing to deal with COVID, and what are their plans moving forward to deal with COVID? Why don't we start with you, Joel?
Oh, okay. Well, I can talk about that. That's a good point. So from the perspective, so I do work with CodeFirm in the sense that we're talking to some venues that are implementing some new technologies like Vision. And this is high level stuff. We're working with a camera manufacturer that does some really advanced things. I mean, these cameras are defense level cameras, and they can get perspiration, heart rate. So it's full monitoring coverage. Sorry, I think, is there a delay there? You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I have a couple of windows open here, so I just want to make sure. So, I mean, and CodeFirm's known for a lot of things: artificial intelligence, CAD, CAM, AR, VR, geospatial, enterprise software. We do a lot, right? But in the sense of what we're doing right now in the theme park and casinos and some of the hospitality industry that we're talking to, I mean, I just had a really great call with a resort, a guy who does the audiovisual integration for a resort in Punta Cana in Dominican Republic. And literally, Troy and I got on that call this morning. And I mean, they could use a lot of our technology. For example, a drowning algorithm. If somebody's at the beach, and the lifeguard might be looking at some of the girls or distracted, right? And somebody's doing that jerking motion. They're drowning. They're being pulled by a riptide. These cameras can go out and detect that. So let's put yourself in the role of this investment group that owns this resort. Could you have saved some lives by having an automated system that sends an alert that says there's somebody out there you're not watching, but they're drowning, right? Or a pool. Let's say it's a kid in a pool at a resort. So this algorithm that we've already done for another client, we're just grabbing a little piece of code that is not proprietary and implementing it in a different way. So now we could probably save lives at a wave pool at a theme park. That same technology is being applied for cafeteria. So we can use the technology for the temperature checking. There's an algorithm that does that. It took us less than a week to develop the PPE detection. So are your employees wearing their PPE? Is there somebody in the kitchen right now that took the mask off and the manager's not there and he's cooking without his mask? Wouldn't you want to have an alert? Now, obviously, we can get into this, John, for HIPAA and compliance reasons. There's no identity tied to that information. It's on a localized server. It's not saved on the cloud. If we're monitoring a hall for COPA, which is California Children Online Protection Act, there's no pictures of kids saved. The information gets self-destructs. We don't save it anywhere. So that picture is not tied to a name or a phone number. So once that alert is dealt with, it's destroyed, right? And this is for several reasons. Nobody wants to keep a record of infractions. So, how many times did your employees take their mask off? But at the same time, you want to have a way to deal with that. You only have one manager, and he's having to watch the kitchen and having to watch guests at the restaurant to make sure that they're wearing masks and that the servers are only serving people that are wearing masks. There's a lot of new issues, legal and operational, that they have to deal with. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of issues at our panelists here, but this is that we're developing, right? Another solution that came about from a cinema, I'm not going to talk about the client, but a movie theater operator, is that, yes, they're interested in knowing the temperature, because doing the one-to-one checking as people walk into a venue is highly ineffective. If I'm in a casino, and I'm not going to talk about the casino operator, I mentioned this, but I get there at 10 a.m. and I'm going to gamble my Social Security check away, which is what I do every week. And by 11, my body has changed, right? Because I've been eating the free food, pastelitos, whatever, a free drink. It's 1 o'clock. My body's temperature is completely different than the body temperature I had when I came to the casino to gamble my Social Security check and my 401k away. It's changed. It's 10 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. It's totally different. So the human body is changing constantly. So if I'm watching a movie, if I go to a theme park, just because you checked me at 9 a.m. means nothing by 3 p.m. Okay? That whole bottle of Tylenol that I drank to not ruin the family vacation, that's worn off.
Hopefully not, but I get you.
I paid $100 for those. I don't want to send the family back to the hotel because I'm not feeling sick. So I'm going to pass that check. Have you ever gone to the airport and noticed that people hold a cough, right? Like they're coughing a storm on the plane. Everybody's looking at this person. Oh my God, they're infected. They get to customs. They're just like, they get through customs. They don't cough once, okay? Well, we got a cough detection algorithm. We can tell you if somebody's coughing. So there's a lot of cool things that we can use these algorithms for. Give you a good example. Everybody here, we were all
right, last example, Joe, then we got to move to Joey.
Last one. Okay, here, hold on. I'm not going to take over the screen or anything, but last one. You go to the movie theater, and let's say that's rude of me. Let me get back to a better display. Okay. You're at the movies, and you realize anybody that's ever worked at a movie theater or a venue, the manager at the front desk is selling tickets. Now they have a camera, and we can talk about the legal ramifications of this, watching the cash register to make sure that the manager or assistant manager is not stealing from the register, right? But there's a lot of ways around that. Somebody can buy a ticket, you hit cancel, you refund them the money, they still get the ticket, they walk in, right? So the same camera software that's going to be checking for temperature, the same algorithm that's going to help us check for PPE or cough detection could actually do other things. It can check to make sure that those tickets that were sold at the register, let's say you're seeing in the system that 100 tickets were sold, but there's 150 people inside the theater. That means that venue has a problem, and the regional manager needs to go investigate why is that happening. So there's a lot of applications for machine learning, computer vision that pay for themselves, not only in human lives, but they have an ROI because they make the venue more efficient. But also think about it, you're the owner, you're the investor. Now you know that people aren't scamming the system when it comes to tickets, right? Now you know that you're not going to have so many incidences at the beach because people aren't drowning. So what I'm trying to get at is that this software that CodeFirm is writing has so many applications beyond just one thing. So we're talking about human lives here. We're going to save human lives. We're talking about ROI. We're going to provide ROI to that. And it's the same code that we're just using in a different way with the computer vision. Sorry, I took up a lot of time, but that's just count it twice.
Hey, I would buy it. It sounds good to me.
Now let's talk about the legal ramifications, right?
Yeah. So Joey and John, really. So what are you seeing from clients right now, from California to Texas to New York to Florida? It can be different based on where they're located. What are they doing to succeed right now? And what are employers having to really deal with from both a legal ramification and just a COVID ramification of having remote employees that might have, burnout from this?
Yeah, well, I can kind of speak to what Joel was talking about a little bit and ask a question for John here about legal stuff. But what we're seeing is like people are so hesitant, people as in clients and companies I'm talking to day to day, all high growth technology companies or like larger enterprises that are national firms, et cetera. They're scared about what their liability is and bringing people in, even if it's not a mandatory quarantine where like people have to go remote, like their offices are technically still allowed to be open, but they're not sure where the line is drawn, like what's their liability if someone does get sick or some sort of incident happens or anything like that. So they're scared and just opt to go remote or go virtual, even at the cost of some business efficiency. But I think there's been a matter of not a lot of knowledge share or things to learn from. Like we don't all have a great lawyer by our side like John. I'm curious to hear about some of that stuff. And it's just a thing of people not really knowing what's going on or what their liability is.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand the not knowing part of this because the reality is COVID litigation isn't really going to get decided anytime in the foreseeable future. It's going to take a little bit to go through a court system. So we're kind of in a unique position right now where there are a lot of issues that are popping up. Joel mentioned a couple, with the childhood online privacy protection rule, all the different HIPAA kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in particular with HIPAA in this one that is going to be pretty applicable in the sense of how are you informing, coworkers or even customers about potentially being exposed to COVID without violating that rule. And that's something that's definitely a huge issue right now.
Let me throw another one. Are people liable? Are businesses liable? If I had a way of ensuring that if I had the capacity or the ability these microphones just went off. Not mine.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Sorry. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I do now.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, you know what? I bought this neat little thing and I just realized it's not plugged in. What's going on here? So what are the honestly, what are the ramifications? Can an employer get sued if they knowingly didn't enforce PPE?
Well, I think what you're going to end up having is you're going to have some people trying to bring some kind of negligence actions. And I mean, like, there's obviously an argument you can make if you're intentionally not doing anything, but I don't know how successful some of those are going to be. That's going to be a very interesting thing to watch over the next few months. I definitely think that there is a strong benefit to doing proper PPE and doing proper kind of temperature checks and stuff like that, and just making sure you're obeying any kind of government ordinances that have been put in place. And I mean, that's where you really need to be taking a lot of cues from, is making sure you're following that. But just because you're following that doesn't mean you're necessarily going as far as you could be, you know? So like, it's going to be an interesting area. I don't have a firm answer, because the reality is anytime you're dealing with legal issues like this, there's a lot of factual determination that needs to get made by a finder of fact. And what I mean by that is there's going to be a judge or a jury that sits back and says, yeah, if you didn't, you know, do any PPE or any kind of monitoring, then you clearly were, you know, negligent, you know, so that could happen. That may not happen. You know, it's one of those times when an attorney has to say it does depend.
I mean, like, let's talk about ADA. Sorry, Sonny, I'm jumping in here. Like, there's a lot of, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that work? Check. All right, good. So, like ADA, there's all these fake ADA cards going on. And one of the conversations I had was like, well, we don't want to intrude upon people or force PP unless, you know, the state of California tells us we have to enforce it. And I felt like that's a little like, not just wishy-washy, but it's basically putting money over human lives, because you don't want to hire an extra employee or buy a kiosk to check temperature. And when you look like at London or in the UK or what they're doing in France, where they're mandating certain things, you have to have hand sanitation, right? You have to have social distancing. You have to wear PPE. You have to provide records that you filled those machines. Like, there's nothing worse than going to Target and, you know, or sorry, I shouldn't single out a potential client, a retailer, you know, whoever, and you go try to use a hand pump, right? And it's empty, right? And I saw some of the reopening for the theme parks. They put the jugs, but there was no pump. So, I mean, there's just so many issues with this, right? But you're doing the bare minimum. And there's so much technology out there right now. And sorry that I'm a big proponent of technology, innovation, and bringing in software. But at the same time, little things like, you know, hand sanitation that is like, you know, that doesn't require a pump. That's you know, contactless. There's like so much technology that we could do, you know, decontamination procedures for certain places, or even just the fact that we have half the country doesn't want to wear a mask. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I know I'm offending a lot of people right now. I'm intruding upon your individual freedom, but let me throw one at you, John. No shirts, no shoes, no service. I mean, doesn't that apply? It's my venue. I think
that's why you're seeing places like, so I live in New Smyrna right now. I actually commute to Orlando typically. They just passed their ordinance 3-2, basically saying that you're now required to wear a mask. However, there's no fines associated with it. And my first gut was like, well, why would you do that? It seems kind of pointless. But the reality is what they are doing is they are giving, you know, people who want to have a no mask policy at their business a little bit of a stronger leg to stand on, you know, because now I can be like, yeah, I'm turning you away, you know, and it's not discriminatory to say you have to wear a mask. You know, that is not going to be an issue. What we are going to be seeing, though, when you mentioned ADA, is the real ADA concerns that can pop up here are whether or not the policies that employers are employing are discriminatory toward their employees. So if you're making a certain group of your employees show up to the office, but other groups don't have to, that's when you need to be sitting back and analyzing that critically and making sure that you're not doing something that is affecting one protected class, you know, whether it's a race or a gender or whatever else,
well, what
in a way that's not fair to others, you know?
Am I allowed as an employer to ask somebody, you know, for their temperature as an employer? Because I read somewhere, somebody's mic is getting feedback. I don't think it's mine. But so am I allowed to ask that?
See, that's a very interesting thing, and honestly,
because I read the equal.
I'm not going to make a blanket
statement
on that one, because again, that could depend where you're at, what state you're in, what location you're in. You know, that one can drastically change depending on where you're at. You do need to be very careful whenever you are trying to kind of invade someone else's privacy and someone else's health kind of concerns. That's why those are the real concerns, even when implementing this kind of stuff. So you need to just be very careful and make sure you are working with a legal professional on that.
I'm at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, right? Sorry, I'm doing my research here, and I'm happy to share that we're all duly informed because we should be informed about this stuff. I mean, I think we should. If you can see the screen, can you see the screen? Let's read it for most of Americans, and for anybody who doesn't do the research. June 17th, you're allowed to collect temperature now, and that Title I of the ADA applies to private employers with 15 or more employees. But right now it's waived. You can collect temperature for. You can't ask for disability or anything like that. But it's saying here that you're allowed to collect temperature right now to protect the other employees. So I get this is like Star Trek, guys. I mean, we're all into this, right? The needs of the many, right? More important than the needs of the one. So here's my question: may an employer administer a test to detect the COVID-19 virus before permitting employees to enter the workplace? So it's not a medical test. You can collect temperature though, but you can't do like a medical.
Well,
test.
In general, it depends on invasiveness when it comes to stuff like that. Like they're not going to let you do a blood test. That's absolutely asinine. That is a huge invasion of privacy. When you're able to do a little scan without even touching someone, that's a little bit different. And I think that's kind of what you're working on with some of the stuff you're doing. But we're definitely in a very unique perspective right now where there's a lot of different issues. So employees are definitely going to be concerned even when it comes to overtime and paid leave issues that are popping up, because some of the people who would have previously been, kind of in that class where they no longer get overtime because of their salary may have changed because of things going on with COVID. Just from a customer angle, we're going to need to worry about waivers. That's something that's very, very relevant right now. Because again, if you're trying to waive all your risk, saying you enter at your own risk, the customers need to be aware of that kind of thing. And you need to be going through a full waiver process. And you definitely need to be making sure that you are taking into consideration the procedures you need to keep your specific environment and conditions safe for them. And when you've had employees exposed to COVID, you need to be doing something to kind of prevent that from spreading, The reality is when it comes to a lot of this stuff, I think where this is going to get kind of backlogged is it's going to be very difficult to prove that one company's specific action is how one person got it.
Well,
as a customer, I think it could be a little easier from an employee perspective.
Let's put this hypothetical situation. I got COVID because my employer didn't enforce masks and social distancing and didn't put any hand sanitation stuff out there. I'm reading online right now. Sorry, Sonny, I took over. A lot of employers are giving the PPE to the employees. Mm-hmm. They're now paying for it because it was kind of unfair a couple months ago, which again, we're a little slow to adapt to this reality, right? But, I'm an employee. I got to go work every day. Why should I be paying for this extra mask that I wasn't going to spend my money on? I could have stayed at home and been safe, right? So it's kind of like a tool of the trade now. You go to work and they hand you a mask if you have to go to the office. So I can see why if an employer is not enforcing these rules, and Bob over here is coughing, and I got COVID because of Bob, and John, wrong name, Mr. Smith, isn't enforcing these things. When I have a case, you have a case over anything, but I'm just trying to think, hey, you're a counselor. Tell me, do you think they have a case here?
That's exactly what I said earlier, is that this is going to come to a finder of fact. I can't tell you the answer. There is no answer.
Sorry,
this is literally the number one reason why people hate attorneys. Because in this instance, 100% is it depends. Yeah. It's really not a firm answer I can give you. What I can do is tell you to push you in the direction that I think is going to most likely protect you. And in that instance, I think doing what you can that puts you in the best situation, both legally, ethically, and morally for your customers and your employees, is going to be the best spot you can be.
And I think that's the key. I want to take away from this. And when it comes to look, we have a technology recruiter. We have TriNet. We have John here who's giving us some advice. I think that's the thing. There's a difference, and I deal with different things: advertising, digital signage, micromobility. I'm dealing with software, and across the spectrum, you see the difference between companies that actually care about their employees and they're willing to invest in high-level infrastructure and investments for the future, whether it be vending machines with masks that are free for the employees, right? Or just letting everybody work from home. Why do we need that office anymore? Okay, we get a smaller office. Why do we need the 26th floor? So it's just, there's a lot of change happening very, very quickly across America, and you see it in technology, you see it in Silicon Valley, you see it in Florida. We're gonna have a guest next week from New York, and she's telling me the same things, right? So I think there's something here, and I wanted your legal mind to give me that feedback, right? Because there's the difference between the technology company, the employee who invests and is investing in safety. And this, I can't even say the retailer who's investing in safety. I want to go to a mall that is enforcing temperature. I want to go to a mall that is checking that people aren't coughing, that they're wearing PPE. I don't want to go to a mall or a movie theater where the guy next to me takes off the mask. And I think that's the existential question that nobody is asking. Everybody's talking about reopening and how great it is for business. Nobody's talking about the extra 50,000 people that are going to die before we come up with a vaccine. And that's what's heartbreaking. We're putting money before human lives. And sorry, I took over with my speech here, but I want to be a little controversial. I want to start making this podcast work. But give me some real opinions here.
Well, you're right, Joel. It's even like just talking to candidates and doing the recruiting thing like we do. People aren't worried about what organizations that they're looking at for new jobs are doing in terms of like a legal matter. They want to know that they actually care about the safety and well-being of the employees and them potentially being one. They're asking us up front, like in initial phone interviews and things like that, like what is this company doing in terms of remote policies right now? What are they doing in terms of PPE? What is their master plan in terms of like COVID solutions and workforce safety and sanitization right now? Are they using masks? Are they mandating it? Are they doing those temperature checks? Are they doing like proactive sanitizations? Things like that. Like it's like a staple thing for an organization to have if you're in recruitment and trying to grow your company as one of those employee benefits. It used to be ping pong tables, free snacks, and a keg in the office. Now it's face masks, temperature scans, and using BioAway to sanitize your office every week.
Yeah, I used to have TriNet, and it was great, and I highly recommend it since Sunny's being quiet here.
There's certain things I can speak to and certain things I can. I can say that from an HR perspective, COVID is very top of mind, right? So a lot of clients are asking those questions of, from an HR perspective, what can we do? What can't we do? And just like, everyone is speaking to, recruitment to legal to HR, all of that has been part of the discussion. And like I said, there's certain things I'm not allowed to really
No, of course not. But you know what? It's good to know that for smaller firms that don't have an HR department, that they don't have 10 people in an in-house legal counsel, right? There's a lot of things that you can get a fractional attorney. You can call John, right? You can get somebody who on the phone who can give you some good legal advice. You can get an HR software or a platform that has all that. I used to be able to go on and check my employee manual and filed the dates I was going to get for vacation. And I got great statements, right? And I think smaller companies that had a in-house bookkeeper, an in-house HR person, and now they're having to adapt. They have smaller budgets, right? So they haven't even looked. I don't even know. Maybe you can tell me the percentage of companies that haven't looked at software like a platform like TriNet, because I still feel that a lot of them would benefit from looking at that.
That's a good point. So I would say probably about 70% still aren't aware of what a TriNet might be or how it can help their business, right? So from an HR perspective, we can take that administrative burden off their plate, take on the liability of payroll, HR, benefits, even some legal related issues.
Questions about COVID, right?
Yeah, questions about COVID. So for example, we had a COVID webinar just yesterday. How do you handle bringing people back to work? What does that look like? We have attorneys that are available to answer those questions too. Folks are not sure how to track time from home. People working from home. How do we need a time tracking system. Can you help us with this? So there's a lot of certain things that come with COVID and a lot of things that we do that are benefiting a lot of our clients.
Nice. See, you weren't just a co-host. I gave you some time. Now, honestly, I think
Thank you, Joe.
One of the things I love about Mateus and Troy is that they have a couple of good things that they believe in. One of the things I've learned with them, they said, is like, we don't want to work on projects that do bad. We don't want to be Big Brother. We want to do things that do good. So all the software that we're working on has to have a purpose if it's going to be a product, because we don't do products, we're solutions providers. And I like that. I like that. Look, everything gets erased. It's HIPAA compliant. I mean, John can attest that we've had these conversations. We don't want to put employees or employers in a position where they have information. And I think this is going to be the root of the issue for us to become more like what some of the European countries are doing. Not as invasive as the facial detection that they have in that big CHINA country party that we can't talk about, but because I don't want to be banned there if I ever go to Hong Kong again. But the truth is, you can use the facial recognition for good. I mean, we were going to use it as an HR software to find people inside a warehouse or in a big facility, and now we're using it to save lives against, diseases or somebody that's drowning. So I think it can be used for good. And it doesn't cost much. As a matter of fact, I would love to talk to some of these people and say, look, you're making a small investment in a camera system, you don't have to buy it from us. Buy it from, a kiosk provider, a little kiosk. As you walk in, you could save a life. And I just don't understand the whole hesitation to embrace PPE or camera software or any of these things. I mean, it's just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Maybe I'm looking at it from a higher, 30,000 feet above the air and looking down and saying, nothing makes any sense right now, right? So,
well, I think if we jump back to the original question that started all this that Sonny asked was like, what do business providers need to be, doing as a result of COVID? And I think the reaction or the answer is honestly just be proactive. Plan ahead, figure out what your plan is for if this happens. Make sure you're working with an HR department or a legal department. Make sure you have actual answers. A lot of this is so factual specific that even though I'd love to just say this is 100% always the answer, it's going to depend for, your specific situation. Like someone may be doing something that works in this instance, but it doesn't work in another. And that could be even just as simple as location-based.
Am I infringing upon my employees' constitutional rights by asking them to wear a mask? Go ahead. It's controversial. Answer that one.
Well, I'm just going to start with, in general, my thought process is I don't really like listening to people try to be constitutional scholars when it comes
especially
to
in the
stuff.
supermarket,
whether it's on the supermarket or Facebook or, whatever else. Because, I mean, that's an issue that's going to get solved by people who focus on that area.
Okay.
The average person that brings that up probably doesn't even know how long the Constitution actually is.
They probably don't.
It's not a very big document. It's pretty short in its original form. So yeah, no, I mean that's a whole other ball of wax that I'm not even going to touch.
That seems to be a bit of a pain point for you, John. I'm detecting.
So Joey, I'm really glad that people are high level tech, entrepreneurs are asking these questions and what they can do for their employees. I mean, you talk to a lot of CEOs. Is that something that they're saying you can start working from home? Sorry, I jumped in with a question here, but is that the new normal going forward in the post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think people are still waiting and trying to figure out the new normal. They're just trying to get by right now, ultimately. I don't think it's really sunk in to everyone just yet that this is even going to be long term. No one obviously knows how long term it's going to be, but people are just hoping that it's going to be a short stint. But slowly adding new solutions, doing things that can just keep them efficient and trying to figure it out, like adding all those solutions if they got to go back to the office, like the PPE and different guidelines, just to be proactive, like John said. And a lot of people obviously are just keeping it top of mind.
So somebody claiming ADA that they don't have to wear masks, do they have to show proof to HR or to the company?
Well, that ADA card that I'm assuming you're bringing up is fake, and that's from.
That's
God
what I
knows
want. That's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah,
I thought that was for
that one you're
dogs.
talking about. I've seen it on Facebook. I think everybody's seen it.
Yeah,
that's completely a fake card.
Sorry,
that's not what we're worried about. At the end of the day, when you see stuff like that, again, I wouldn't stress it, especially with the fact that you already have pretty much, at least in Florida, I'm starting to see every county start to come down finally and sit back and say everyone needs to be wearing masks, because the reality is that is probably one of the best things we can do.
Well, here we go.
What if an employer
can't afford? What if an employer can't afford to provide alternatives like masks or PPE? What if the employer just, are they liable?
First off, I'd like to know what employer can't afford a mask that costs about $1.
Good answer. Thank you.
When they're having employees. So
Okay.
like that's a little bit of a far-fetched question in my opinion.
That's an argument I've heard some employers make. And I think it is a far-fetched question, especially when there's so many counties around the country giving it away, right? Hospitals are.
Well, and if I recall correctly, in Orange County, which a lot of us are located in for our businesses, they're giving that stuff away. That shouldn't really be the complaint. You know, I understand.
Do they have the right
to
profit? I'm reading some of the questions coming in on the chat. Do they have the right to put profits over people? Especially where states where the masks have been mandated.
I think you're largely asking something that boils into a political question at that point.
Well, these are all the questions I'm getting. I'm just reading them from
yeah. Well, I'm just curious. I don't see it.
You think I come up with this? I don't come up with this. I'm getting help. So, okay, here we go. For Joey, what responsibilities does HR have to a person who does not want to wear a mask? Joey.
Yeah, that might be more of a Sunny question.
Sunny, take it away.
But
so I would say it is definitely up our alley. It's not something I can comment on just because it's the nature of being a public company with TriNet, right? I can't give legal HR advice in this platform right now.
Yeah, Sunny has a lot of the same constraints on him that honestly I do at the end of the day.
I'm wearing a client shirt, so you know.
All good.
At the end of the day, I got to be careful on what I say too.
Yeah, we all have.
You never want somebody to rely on some advice that you gave for information purposes, thinking that suddenly you're their attorney just because they watched you on their phone or something.
Yep.
You know, even though there was never a two-way communication. That type of stuff can happen, so that's why it's always one of those things. You got to put those
legal advice. What are you talking about? Oh my god!
I can tell you a lot of things that come up are, you know, how do we treat furloughed employees coming back? How do we, you know, put people on furlough? What about unemployment? You know, how does all that work? So those types of questions do certainly come up from an HR perspective, and how are we in compliance? What's the latest on the PPP loans? What about the changes? All those things are coming up from a COVID perspective.
Interesting. So, guys, any last comments? I don't see nobody. People want to ask questions, but they're not wanting to join today, so we don't have any callers. That's probably my bad. But hopefully next time we'll have some. We've had former guests call in, which I really do like. I want to encourage that in the future. Guys, any last thoughts to how technology is merging with this post-COVID world? Because I'm all in it. Let me give you one last example. SwiftMile. We added, Colin, the CEO of SwiftMile, did a great job. He saw the opportunity. He said, you know what? People are really embracing micromobility, e-scooters. By the way, we have 20 stations at UCF campus with a company called Spin, which is owned by Ford Mobility. And they get amazing usage, the e-scooter charging stations, right? We added the sanitation wipes to each station. That the emails about this, the commentary, no cost, free. Just take them, doesn't matter. I mean, some people just take 3 or 4 and they put them in their pockets. We don't care. It was just something that the brand did, and it's something for good. And when I see that, and I see those, you know, those actions, it costs the company money, but you're doing it to get, you know, publicity, or you're doing it because it's a good thing, or it doesn't really matter. You're doing it for the good of everybody, right? The more disinfecting wipes and hand gel out there, the better. I have a trouble when I see companies not wanting to invest, and I lost my train of thought there. But anyways, any last thoughts, guys? I just wanted to say, look, we did this one thing. It worked. It worked for the good of everybody. And I think more companies should embrace that. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I think what you're saying is very similar to what I was saying earlier, where just beyond the legal issues, there's also ethical and moral ones. So when you can help people out and it doesn't really hurt you to do it, then why would you not do it? And that's always one of those things that you need to keep top of mind.
Is that a topic in law school, or?
Probably not. But I mean, that's not to say it shouldn't be, you know.
Well, we both went to UF, so I know you got a quality education.
Yep, and obviously UCF as well.
Oh, there you go.
I got the best 2 in the state in my book. Though obviously Troy will argue with me a little bit on that one.
Joey, any last thoughts? Tell us about any good success stories. I talked about my success stories, talked about CodeFirm, talked about SwiftMile, what's going on. Tell me about, I mean, are you legally, can you talk about a success story? Like somebody who's having a lot of success now in the post-COVID world, recruiting?
Yeah, well, I can say another UF guy here, another Gator. I'll
go
join
Gators.
the club there. But the people that are being most successful in their hiring strategies and like attracting new talent right now are adapting super quickly. They're implementing tons of different technologies, not just in their recruitment and like candidate qualification process, but they're actually like doing technology that's showing they're being proactive, showing they're ethical, and showing they care about like the livelihood of their employees, because people really care about that at a bottom line. They want to know, and they're going to ask how you're handling this situation, the pandemic and everything else, and they know that's going to reflect in their potential like candidacy with you and their potential employment with you, and they just want to know that you're a good, honest person in a company they want to work for, and that's like top of mind for everyone.
Awesome. Good stuff. So guys, we reached that point of the show. We have no callers today, but let's talk about something off topic. Sonny, why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Any good books, any comics, anything you're doing in the post-apocalyptic COVID world?
You know what I got was one of those Chuck Norris Total Gyms just this week.
No.
Yeah.
Somebody who's actually working out. That's awesome. Good for you.
Our gym is open. Our gym is open. I'm a little, concerned about going back to it. I'm like, I got to do something else besides like push-ups and squats and walking outside. And my wife and I take walks outside, which is healthy. But
That's about one of these.
You are
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going to be going to a
it.
gym anytime soon. I don't really think they're that safe. And obviously, this isn't going to be the greatest workout, but at least it's something. Anytime you're getting up and moving, it's better than nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think Joey even said it earlier. Meetings are starting to turn to where, hey, VR is better than nothing. We're doing a meeting actually with the VR AR Association next month, this month now, focused on video games, and that'll be in alt space. So that's kind of cool.
So Joey, I thought when the world ended, it would be, or something like this would happen. I always imagine it would be a lot of iPads with the remote control cars running around the offices, connecting, saying, "Hey,
I think we'll get there." Yeah, I think we'll get there.
I thought that was going to take off. I was like, "Oh my god, where are the iPads on the stick walking around?" Nobody's
sooner or later, they're gonna realize they don't need a real person behind it. That's what they're afraid of.
Good stuff. So John, any good books besides VR?
I haven't been reading anything too much that's not work related, but I did finally watch Avatar on Netflix, and I'm like, I went 30 years of my life without Uncle Iroh's sage advice, and I'm like, I feel like I missed out on life.
Oh my gosh, the top pick.
Funny, Joey, your turn.
Same boat with John. Caught up on some Avatar on Netflix. Top-notch show. Recommended to everyone.
Right
yeah. I'm an avid slackliner now, and I bought a giant beanbag. It's like an 8-foot long beanbag. You guys should check it out. They're called Big Joe's, so it was fitting.
It's a college thing, right?
It was, yeah.
All right. So my recommendations, we had somebody from Netflix on the show at the last episode, and I mentioned The Old Guard, which is now a movie with Charlize Theron on Netflix. The Old Guard, great comic book. I highly recommend it. And Ruck is one of my favorite writers. I was talking about him because he also writes Lazarus. Big change I've seen in media. Maybe this is a future topic for technology and media, but I don't know if you noticed this, but Netflix is publishing comic books now.
Oh,
because they own the rights to Mark Millar's universe. So his new movies, which are going to be made by Netflix, come out as comics first, published by Netflix. So they're taking on the Marvel, Disney, the mouse, and Warner with DC. It's very interesting to see a media company entering that space. So cool. just off topic, but relevant, because last week I talked about some not last week, the week before I talked about some comics. So I actually think this COVID legal discussion warrants another episode where we can come up with more examples of what's coming out. Look at John smiling. I can see him smiling. So hold on, let me put him on the screen here. I really do. And I want to bring in another attorney, an appellate attorney, a good friend of mine from New York, Sarah Watkins. She's agreed to join us on the next episode. And she's technology has changed everything that's happening in the appellate courts, because she writes briefs, and she's doing her blog talking about things like, don't turn off the camera when you're in a Zoom call with the judges, right? Just crazy stuff like that a year ago, no lawyer had to train on how to become a media star.
Yeah, I think Texas was the one that was trying to do the first trial by Zoom, and I'm just like, that's a crazy concept that I don't even want to imagine how that would go to appellate courts later on. You know, God forbid whatever outcome ends up happening, you know, with whether or not that was even fair to begin with.
Well, that's the world we live in now. So, so if you guys want to join me, we're going to talk about the legal ramifications of law by Zoom. Maybe we can continue this from an HR perspective and talk to her because she has some great examples. And now we can have up to 10 people instead of 4 squares. We can have 10 squares. It could be like a real Zoom party for the podcast. So, guys, I hope you join me.
Awesome.
The next episode. We've reached our mark. It's almost an hour. So I just want to say bye. Thank you very much. Check out if anybody wants to reach Sonny. There's a link in the bio to his LinkedIn, so you can bother him about benefits. Joey, if you want to get recruited, talk to this guy, or if you need a good recruiter. And John is always available at lasterlaw.com. I featured his website earlier. And thanks for having me as a guest, Joel. Thank you. And with CodeFirm, make sure to check out CodeFirm and ViewStub, our sponsors for the show. Guys, thank you so much. Wear your masks. Be safe. Please don't leave the house unless you really, really have to. Don't listen to any government entity that tells you not to wear a mask because they're just not. Let's focus on the science and the technology aspect of this. We can beat this. We can beat COVID. I believe we can. I have to. I think we all have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys.
Sound very John, get with it, man. You gotta be positive about this. We're gonna beat it. We're gonna beat it. If not, there's no more show. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening, guys. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Where's my brand? Where's my brand logo? Oh, there we go.